Hi everybody, Sarah Kuro here. Welcome to my channel, Sarah Kuro Interviews. Today I have the charismatic chorus master, conductor and founder of the vocal group in Melbourne, Polyphonic Voices, Michael Fulcher. Hi!
Hi, Sarah. How you going?
Oh, it's so great to see you. I haven't seen you for ages because you're just as busy as me.
Absolutely.
So today I'm really interested in talking to you about your what's now, I guess you'd consider your distant past. You went overseas to study and to live, I believe. You went back to old Blighty, is that right? That's
Yep,
England for anyone who doesn't know what that is.
that's right. The old country. Yeah, well, we were 10-pound poms in 1968. When
I
I,
think most people won't know what that is. What's a 10-pound
well,
pom?
10-pound pom is they had this assisted passage thing. A lot of people came on the boat, but we came on the plane. We came on a VC-10 in the back row, and it was there with the cheap seats because the back row was right next to the twin engines on either side of the tailplane. It was the noisiest. Like, took 2 days to get here, stopped 5 times.
Oh my
I'd
God.
rather had his birthday on the plane. We were on it for so long. Yeah, and then so that was a long time ago. Yeah. So my father was headhunted out to Brisbane to sort of build the first wave of all the high rises. Actually, he was a quantity surveyor. Yeah, and then so I grew up in Brizzy. Was a chorister at the cathedral. Went to churchy. Did lots of music. Did my BMOs at the uni. Did some postgrad at the con. Studied conducting with your dad. Did a lot of work. Played keyboards for piano and Celeste and organ parts for QIO1 as it was then, before it was QIS. Yeah. So, and then I went back in, let me get this right. I went back in 96, just the very end of 96, because my then partner had a full scholarship to Oxford. So,
Mm.
yeah, I took 8 months of unpaid leave from Trinity College, where I was there, had been director of music for 3 years, which was fabulous and going very well and so on. While I was building up, yeah, and I got over there, and all sorts of things opened up for me. And I was in my early 30s, so I'd hoped they would. And I was I was studying unofficially with Charles McCarris and Mark Elder,
Wow.
so I could go to any of their rehearsals anywhere in Europe. And there was a lot I went all over England, sitting in all their rehearsals. And it wasn't a casual thing. I remember going to Simon Boccanegra rehearsals at the Garden in '97, just before they closed the house. It was in the Covent Garden Festival. And they had not one, but two different productions of Simon Boccanegra on. One of them was conducted by Mark, and it was the first time he'd conducted in that house. I think it was his debut at Covent Garden, or no, I couldn't have been. But it was his debut working with Domingo, Placido Domingo, and they were doing the original 1857 version of the piece, and Schulte was conducting the revised 1881 version, which was a success. The 1887 was a flop. 1850, sorry, the 1857 was a flop. And so Verdi put it on the side, and then he revised it. He made little changes all the way through it, and then he wrote and added the council chamber scene at the end of Act Two. There's a great big sort of hammer and tongs ensemble and chorus and everything. Anyway, so it was very interesting seeing both versions of the piece side by side, and seeing Domingo and Callan Asperian, who was Domingo's protege, and Sergei Lafracus, who was sort of learning the role. I think it's the first time he'd sung it. He was learning it off the hoof. He could sort of sing it through and then immediately just go and do the production rehearsal. He was amazing.
Oh.
So yeah, I went back and did all that sort of stuff, and things opened up there. And I gulped and resigned from Trinity while I was over there. And imagine that, resigning from Trinity College. Anyway, that's what I did. And the warden wasn't terribly happy, but he was a great guy, Evan Burge. I mean, he was absolutely marvelous to work for, and he understood he understood what it took to create the conditions for a successful choir.
Oh, and what do you think those conditions are? What'd you learn from him there?
Well, I already knew it, but the trouble is getting the people you work for to actually understand that is a different thing. He knew that he needed to be really supportive on a daily basis. Helped me out when I was quite young. He helped me out with various things as a mentor, but he never invaded my space. He made me feel like I was running the show And if he thought something was a little bit ambitious or a little bit out, off course, he would gently steer me back. And he was so wonderful with all the singers. He made sure that there was priority given to the choir in the college life and in its schedule, and he talked it up. He was just
Beautiful.
fabulous. And
Yeah.
I met his lovely wife only recently at Trinity at a function, and I was remembering this, and she said, "Oh yes, he loved the choir and he knew how to make it work." And I said, "Didn't he ever?" Anyway, so I resigned. That was in when was that? 97, about April 97. And at the same time, Opera Queensland asked me to come back, and I'd only just got over there to come back and be young artist conductor. So I told Opera Queensland no. I said, I've only just got there, so I don't want to. Yeah, I said, I'm not coming straight back. So that was another gulp moment. And then somebody else did it for a year. And then I thought that door would close forever. And then Susanna Conway rang me the next year, and so was it Chris Mangan by then, and said, "Oh, would you come back and do it? Would you come back and be?" So I thought, 2 strikes, I better do it.
Yeah.
So I went back for 5 months, but it was really hard going back from London, there was all this tug that I was no different a musician from what I'd been 6 months ago, and they were going to say, bringing me back from overseas.
I know, and that's the thing that Australian administrators do, isn't it?
They love that copy, and you
yes.
go, okay, I need 10 years over here to actually learn something and actually learn my craft and learn what the standards are, get to know how things work.
Now I've got a question for you. You studied orchestral conducting. You're a chorus master, and you could conduct operas. You're a kind of versatile conductor. But for those of you out there, what's the difference between a chorus master and a conductor? What do you have to do differently?
Just take one step back from that. When you study opera conducting, you have to be able to deal with preparing individual singers, solo singers, and in their roles, in their arias, in their duets, in their ensembles, and then you have to know how to deal with the chorus, and you have to know how to put those together. Then you have to know how to unite the pit, the orchestra in the pit with what's going on stage, and that basically was the genesis of most great conductors before the advent of the conducting competition, where people were discovered in a conducting competition and they got chucked into things. And I remember, without the background of being in opera, like Karajan and Bruno Walter, Otto Klemperer, all those type of people, I think even Carlos Kleiber, they were originally opera people. So they dealt with the orchestra. They had to be able to conduct the orchestra. They had to prepare the orchestra. They had to be great performers. They had to be able to prepare the singers in any situation, right, in a multitudinous array of languages, and probably be able to speak 2 or 3 languages themselves, if not more. So they could deal with all that. So to get back to your question, is that the chorus master, if a person is a career chorus master, they have to be fairly happy not to do much public conducting and performances, because they prepare the chorus for the conductor, the orchestra, right? So, and they're often not orchestrally trained, but they understand what the orchestral conductor needs, right? And you have to be able to train your singers to be able to follow and work with the orchestral conductor, right? And there are various types of attitudes that orchestral conductors have to big choruses, like if you're the LPO chorus or the LSO chorus in London, or if you're James Levine used to fly into London in his day, and I remember sitting through rehearsals in the Albert Hall of Mahler 8, and he had 4 of those choirs, 4 up there, and array of soloists like that. That's basically a big opera, really. You're dealing with operatic forces, except it's on the concert platform. So Mahler was a great conductor, and he was very, very sort of priestly, and there was a religious significance almost for him, the way he worked. Whereas somebody like Richard Strauss was a great conductor, great composer as well, like Mahler, but he was much more sort of connected to practical music making, and he didn't worry too much about details, and he let people get away with things, and he was a totally different sort of character than Mahler. Mahler was very intense, and Strauss was more sort of earthly, if you like. They're both great in their own ways.
Do you think it's more difficult nowadays to, say, win over an orchestra or win over a choir? What sort of things do you have to do to convince the choir or convince the orchestra to do what you want? And is there any difference between how a choir generally will respond to you, how singers respond, compared to how instrumentalists respond? Now, I've talked to you about this before, so I actually know how you feel. But yeah, what would you say is the difference between getting out the best from an orchestra and getting out the best from a choir?
Well, I think you need to, with great respect to both kinds of musicians, singers or instrumentalists, that there is a difference between the way an amateur orchestra or an amateur choir reacts to a beat, or let's call it a gesture from a conductor, compared to particularly a professional orchestra. And I remember having a conversation with Richard Mills about all sorts of things years and years ago. And he said, of course, because when you start out conducting, you end up with, starting with amateur choirs or even very good ones. And then you might have semi-professional orchestra, I might have an amateur orchestra, you might have a professional orchestra if you're lucky enough to have a budget when you're starting out. And you find that those different types of musicians respond to gesture in a different way, and you have to learn how to deal with that. Because if you're a big circuit conductor these days, still the big choirs you're going to come across are amateur choirs. They're not paid, right? If you've got a small crack choir with a Baroque outfit, they're probably going to be paid singers, because they're going to do things in no rehearsal time. But if you get the LSO chorus, the LPO chorus, the Melbourne chorale, or as it was, the MSO chorus, Sydney Philharmonia, they are essentially amateur choirs. They're excellent choirs, but they're not being paid. And they are used to dealing with their orchestra in their hall, and their chorus master knows them and knows how to prepare them, and probably knows the conductors that he's preparing them for and what their particular wants and likes and dislikes are, right? So the basic difference is that often amateur choirs try to sing on your beat, right? Which I absolutely hate, because having studied opera conducting and working with orchestras, is that there has to be some delay between the ictus of the beat, if in fact you do an ictus, if you're not flapping Scoopy gestures, where the orchestra gets to choose wherever they want to play and they play together, and right? So the orchestras respond to different conductors differently, and they have to survive a constant parade of, guest conductors, and even so-called chief conductors are like, I think Lauren Marcel was at the Bavarian State Orchestra 16 weeks of the year.
Yep, that's about right.
So your music director is somebody you like working with, I suppose, as the orchestra, and that you work with them more than you work with the other conductors. But there's a sense in which the orchestra, a professional orchestra of any size, is going to play together. They're going to follow the leader, and they have a culture of what they do, the way they do it. And as an orchestral conductor or an opera conductor, you are interfacing with that, and you are managing that. And I mean that in the broadest possible sense, artistically and practically. But with a amateur choir as good as what I've got with PV, or any like the Adelaide Chamber Singers or really crack chamber choirs, they tend to have their own culture as well. And it's very much dictated by their conductor they work with all the time. So
that's you, though. Polyphonic Voices, that's you all the time, isn't it?
It is. So I've got very particular way. We've built our own sound. It's a sound, a choral tone that no other choir has, and we work at that. And this choir has a lot to say about what they want to sing and what venues they do it. And it was set up. I didn't set it up alone. Actually, two of the singers came to me just after I got to Melbourne and said, "We'd like to form a choir, we'd like you to conduct it." So there was that sort of symbiosis right from the start. So it very much depends on the culture of the group and how it was established. And I mean, there's got a friend a colleague I don't see much, don't talk to much, but I respect him enormously. And he once said at a party, and probably would never own up to it, he once said at a party that choirs, once the founding conductor goes, they should disband, because it never goes as well with the next conductors after, because there's always a tussle between the culture of the founding director and the next,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, and orchestras, the great orchestras of the world have been going for 150 years. Vienna Phil and Berlin Phil, and who I forget the first orchestra in London, what it was. Might have been I think it was the LSO. But anyway, and the thing, you've got those great pit orchestras in London too. You've got the Covent Garden Orchestra and the ENO Orchestra, and they're very fine orchestras. They work with a constant stream of effectively guest conductors. Even the music directors of those houses are not there terribly often, really.
Yeah, that's the way the culture is worldwide now with conductors. I want you to talk more about Polyphonic Voices. I want you to tell me the first concert which I was at. I was absolutely blown away. It reminded me of being in another universe. I couldn't believe the standard of this choir, and I spoke to you afterwards, and you're like, "Oh no, that could have gone better." I mean, you're such a perfectionist. It's ridiculous. It was.
I'm not a perfectionist.
One of the greatest things I've ever seen was that first Polyphonic Voices concert. So, how about
can you remind me where that was? I'm having a blank.
Wasn't it at Trinity?
Oh, Trinity, that's right. Yeah, it was. I mean, the group has come a long way since then. I mean,
yeah, you keep saying that, but I don't know. It's just
the
stunning.
Down a bit, and the sort of the direction and the momentum. The momentum builds kind of with every passing year in a kind of intangible way. And I think one of the things that artistic director needs to do is just to keep pushing ahead.
Yeah.
In whatever way is possible.
But you do that really well with the programming. I think the programming's really, really creative in the best possible way. But look, I tried to have a theme with this interview, and the theme really for me was the difference between Australia and what we can do, and overseas and what they're already doing. So you come back here and you start Polyphonic Voices, and for me it's like a world-class group. But how difficult was it for you in the beginning to get support, to get money, to get audience? Was it difficult? And if you'd done it in England, would it have been even harder because there's heaps more groups like that? What's your feeling about the difference there and here?
Well, the scene's completely different. I mean, there's English music, classical. I hate the word classical music. European art music.
Everyone knows what you're talking about when you say it, though.
I know, but European art music is just absolutely. It's not rusted on. It's actually part of their DNA. I mean, they've had choral singing in church and in the community for 400 years, and community music making goes back before the great cathedrals of the medieval period, and England's particularly interesting. If how long have we got? The history of England has allowed music to flourish.
Yeah,
and Australia's the same as in England in the sense there's a lot more people who want to sing in a good choir or to sing in any choir really than there are audiences to go and hear them.
Right.
So the challenge of getting audiences to come year after year and keep them and actually build a rapport with an audience, that's a constant challenge, like it is for any arts organisation of any kind, not just musicians.
Yeah, that is. I find that about Australia. There are so many great things going on, especially in Melbourne, that I look at my diary because I've got 5 invitations to events on the same night. And not only can I not go, but I'm working. I'm playing in a concert myself.
I got the same problem. And it's constantly frustrating. And to make an event really work, you have to put a lot of effort into promoting it, into making sure it's rehearsed well, and that the program is actually doable and there's enough challenge in it for the singers, but also that you can do it really well in the time. Mm-hmm. Now, as I said before, with respect to the programming, I mean, I'm not totally responsible for it, but I'm ultimately responsible for coordinating various ideas that come from singers and me. And people ask for certain works to be included, and I said, well, that will go better in this program than that. And, and sometimes the committee will come up with a theme for the concert, and I will put that together. But in a way, the programming is probably the easy bit. It's actually making it all happen each week. Have you ever tried to get a choir in this city? There's so many semi-professional singers who are sometimes paid, sometimes not, who are all in different groups, and trying to get them in the same room at the same time is a nightmare. Yeah. It's like, I remember saying that was at the Amadeus Quartet, the first thing they did at a rehearsal was to open their diaries and book the next rehearsal, because apparently somebody would storm out before the end of the rehearsal disagreeing with some artistic decision that they couldn't come to terms with,
Some bowing, probably.
Yeah, because they had some such strong ideas about things. We don't have people. We don't have that. But when we send out, this is the rehearsal schedule, what are you available for?
Yeah.
We've got one rehearsal in like 6 weeks of rehearsal. We're a project choir, so we rehearse just for the. We've got one rehearsal where we can get everybody there. And we've got, people have got something on this night, but they can come on that night. So we're sometimes Monday, we're sometimes Tuesday, we're sometimes Saturday. So that's that's not uncommon.
Yeah, that's the struggle. All right, so it's I want to plug this, and if any of you are watching this video after this concert is over, it doesn't matter, because the link to Polyphonic Voices, click on it, see what's coming up for them. I want everyone to experience Polyphonic Voices at least once in their lifetime in Melbourne. So, Michael, 15th of May.
That's it.
7:30.
7 p.m. isn't it?
7 p.m. Kensington.
7 p.m.
Kensington Town Hall. What's on the program?
Well, it's called the instrumental voice. So it's a lot of instrumental music arranged for singers. So things like Nimrod, Elgar. And somebody's written a fabulous version of it for Watches 8, which we can sing, called Lux Aeterna. So they've written some words which are kind of incidental, but they do fit the elegiac mood. We're doing the Gymnopédie of Satie.
Satie, divine.
Really lovely arrangement of that. And we're doing some interesting sort of stuff like Stephen Leake's Condalilla, which is a Condalilla. You remember Condalilla Falls in Queensland, north of Brisbane?
Oh yeah.
Up near Mullaney, and it's a place of great spiritual significance for our First Nations people.
Oh, fabulous!
Yeah, and that's a piece been around for a long time. It's got lots of bush noises. It's completely improvised in an aleatoric sort of way. The score is graphic. Yeah, and there's another piece like that we're doing called Trillo by Bengt Orlen, a Norwegian composer. And we're finishing off with a fabulous piece in the Yoik tradition of Lapland by Jaakko Mantigiervi, amazing Finnish composer. And also another one by Jan Manja-Förder, who's a trumpet player, who's written a really clever piece, that really cool Swedish flavored, I don't know what it is, you have to listen to the piece. It's a wonderful piece. And some other stuff. A really interesting piece by Meredith Monk called Panda Chart. So, Polyphonic Voices has a policy of including at least one female composer in every program, no matter what.
Very politically apt, Michael. Girls, thank you.
Well, there's a lot of good music. I've got a hard drive. Actually, researched before COVID. I researched probably 10 young women composers in this country for choral works I'd written. I've got them all on my hard drive, and we actually, what would be amazing is to have a program of all women composers to redress the balance a bit. But there's some fantastic music out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not enough time to perform it all, really. So
yeah, it's fantastic. Oh, Michael, I'm so glad you didn't end up back in old Blighty forever. Thank you for coming back.
The thing is, we didn't really get to the nub of it, because you were asking me before, for me, when I hit about 40, my father got sick with cancer. He had a lymphoma, which he subsequently got over, but I was stuck in Paris and I couldn't get home, and I felt really compromised. I thought, heck, I got poleaxed really mentally, and I said, where do I want to be for the rest of my life? Do I want to grow up not knowing, or do I want my nephew and niece to grow up not knowing me at all because they're in Australia? And I actually, in the end, I felt more environmentally Australian than genetically English.
Got it.
So when I'm back in England, I feel closer to the dirt than anything. I really know what our First Nations people say when they feel connected to the land. When I'm in England, that's how I feel. I feel this strange spiritual peace that I'm just there because that's where I don't know. That's all I can say. But in terms of the spirit of the people and the psychology of Australians, I'm much closer to an Australian mentality. Australians are much more open, really. And I think the class structure in England still, the higher class people are the less connected to their emotional needs they are. And I find that in the end, I found that too foreign, because it's not who I am.
Yep.
You know, it's not who my family is. And my mother's missed England every day since 1968. In a way, she missed having her family around, so she's always been going backwards and forwards.
Yeah.
And I had to go back and study and work there. But to bring back the essence of all that and not slavishly follow it in Australia, but let it inform my practice. Do you know what I'm saying?
That sounds absolutely perfect to me. That's right. Thank you so much. That's just stunning. Oh, Polyphonic Voices, 7 p.m, 15th, the instrumental voice. That's next Saturday. Saturday week. Saturday week.
Yeah.
You will not regret it, and you'll get to see Michael in all his glory, prancing around the podium.
I know. I don't conduct like that, as you know. but I am getting my hair done for the day.
Oh, your hair looks great. Okay, get it done again. Awesome. All right, Michael, thank you so much for talking to me. I'm sorry to rush off. I've got to go to Brisbane, which is my spiritual home, actually.
Yes,
I feel that connection, all those red sunsets in the summer. Do you remember them? After storms. Yeah.
And the storms at 5 p.m. Yeah, exactly.
Gorgeous. Yeah. All right, take care, darling. Thank you so much for talking to me.
You're
the best. Bye.
See you. Bye.